Thank you, Lascan. First of all, I want to thank the Minister for taking this topical issue, where I want to discuss with you the need for some type of support schemes or compensation measures to assist businesses and individuals dependent on seasonal tourism in particular, and where there is a very substantial reduction in available tourism accommodation due to the fact that hotels and other accommodation providers are now providing accommodation for refugees. This, of course, has a significant impact on local businesses depending on tourists and visitors alike, both in the short and the long term. And while this issue impacts on a number of different places in my own constituency and elsewhere, I'm raising it in the context of a meeting I attended earlier this week with my colleagues Deputy McSharry and Deputy Feehan in Ross's Point in Sligo on Monday last. Now, as a follow-up to that meeting, Deputy McSharry suggested putting down a topical issue, and we agreed to do that. First of all, Minister, I want to be crystal clear. The tone and content of the meeting in Ross's Point was constructive and seeking solutions. There was no blame game, no anti-refugee sentiment, in fact, the opposite. But there was a recognition that the impact of a huge increase in the population of Ross's Point and the consequent impact on all public services, as well as the loss of huge numbers of beds for the upcoming tourism season, that impact must be managed for the community, the businesses and the refugees. As one man at the meeting said, if the situation were reversed, he wouldn't want to be stuck in a hotel in Ukraine. So it's in that context and that framework of seeking solutions and managing the situation, Minister, that I want to mention, first of all, the broader need for accelerated and coordinated action to, first of all, appoint a dedicated community liaison officer to help ensure integration of new arrivals in the area. Secondly, to increase bus capacity to and from Ross's Point, especially at peak times and school times. And thirdly, increase policing in the peninsula to help ensure security for all. And finally, the issue I want to tease out a little more, the need to appoint a dedicated tourism officer to address the loss of revenue to local tourism dependent businesses. It's important to remember that those businesses employ people, support the fabric of Ross's Point, pay taxes and rates to maintain the area, so that if they close or downsize, the impact is felt throughout the community. So, Minister, I'm asking you to consider some COVID-type supports for businesses interdependent on tourism accommodation. We're speaking of restaurants, of bars, of businesses involving, let's say, maritime activities or any other leisure activities. Approximately 25% of a tourism accommodation outside Dublin is now devoted to housing refugees, and in some areas, like Ross's Point, it's much higher. So, Minister, is there any possibility of some kind of support scheme specifically for those businesses where it can be shown that the impact is substantial? And it isn't just support schemes for loss of income, it's also about greater marketing for areas that are worst affected. So that's where a dedicated tourism officer could really help to support business. Minister, can I say, the first stage was helping to house refugees. I am fully supportive of that, as are the people who attended that meeting. The next stage is to support both communities and refugees. We're now at the next stage, and I want to hear what plans government have in place for that, please.
The Deputy has raised the issue of support schemes and compensation measures to help businesses and individuals dependent on seasonal tourism, which could be adversely affected by the reduction in capacity available this season due to hotels and other tourism accommodation being used to house international asylum seekers and Ukrainian people fleeing war. And I want to thank her for relaying from the meeting the constructive tone of the meeting in Ross's Point and the constructive tone indeed of herself and Deputies Feehan and McSharry. We are approaching the first anniversary of the start of the war in Ukraine, and since then the people of Ireland have welcomed over 90,000 people, between those fleeing that war in Ukraine and other applicants for international protection. This is by some distance the largest humanitarian operation ever undertaken by the Irish state and by the Irish people, and tourism accommodation has played a hugely significant role in the national response to the crisis. And I know that this has placed a strain on the availability of tourism accommodation, with knock-on impacts for other tourist businesses and indeed businesses in the wider local economy. Tourism officials in the Department of Tourism are engaging with a range of departments, with input from Fáilte Ireland, to consider how best to mitigate the potential impacts on the wider tourism ecosystem of long-term use of tourism accommodation. Analysis is being done on those towns or areas most impacted by the unavailability of tourism accommodation. In addition, I can confirm that the Government has approved the construction of 700 rapid-build homes with the potential to house up to 2,800 individuals in family units. These rapid-build homes will be constructed on state-owned land. The OPW is leading this in conjunction with the Department of Children, Equality, Disability, Integration and Youth. The objective is to install 500 units by March or April of this year. The strong early recovery of inbound tourism to Ireland last year was very welcome, but it's fair to say that the tourism industry faces a number of challenges this year. The combination of increasing interest rates in all major economies, rising energy and food prices and the growing prospects of a global recession are major threats to the recovery of international tourism for 2023. In Ireland, hotel capacity, energy costs and labour shortages will continue to challenge the tourism industry. In Budget 23, Minister Martin, and she apologises that she can't be here, I'm her colleague in the department, she secured €15 million in additional funding for overseas marketing of Ireland. As global competition heightens, sustaining extensive marketing campaigns will be vital to support the ongoing recovery effort, building on the initial inbound tourism demand seen in 2022. The budget also contains an additional €15 million for a range of industry initiatives, including a continuation of the investment in skills development and retention, which is €3 million. This provision will facilitate the continuation of work by Fáilte Ireland to address the employment challenges faced by tourism businesses in attracting talent, helping skills development and retaining staff. A €2 million increase in funding for domestic marketing to promote Ireland's tourism offering to Irish holidaymakers. Minister Martin also secured additional funding of €3 million to allow Fáilte Ireland to continue its work in the area of sustainability. Tourism agencies are working hard to help those in the tourism sector. Tourism Ireland will roll out an extensive and targeted programme of activity in 2023 with a total marketing budget of €78 million. A wide range of promotional activities will be undertaken, including a new global marketing campaign, publicity and programming, as well as working with the tourism industry at home and overseas to facilitate sales. Fáilte Ireland will announce plans shortly for work in the area of recruitment and retention of staff and sustainability. There's also the temporary business energy support scheme, and that's designed to help businesses cover their energy costs in the winter months and runs until the 28th of February. The Government is currently looking and reviewing the operation of the scheme, and Minister Martin has received extensive feedback on this from the tourism sector, both written and indeed in person at the Hospitality and Tourism Forum, which she co-chairs. Minister Martin is also aware that the 9% VAT rate is to the forefront of tourism businesses and individuals right now, and strong messages were taken away from the recent Hospitality and Tourism Forum meeting of the need to ensure there's no cliff edge in terms of supports that have already been put in place, and Minister Martin will continue in our regular interaction with government colleagues to communicate the concerns of industry, so that the long-term, to communicate with them as to the long-term effect these issues could potentially have on our tourism sector.
Yeah. Thank you, Minister. And look, there's a lot of goodwill out there still, but it's crucial we harness it. And the people best placed to harness that are the government and the decisions they make, and the local TDs and politicians to try and help support communities. But we have to make sure it happens and that it's real, and that when people get up tomorrow or the day after, they can actually see that it's happening. And that is, in the context of extra public services, transport, etc. But I'm specifically asking you about, supports for business. And I heard what you said about a higher budget for marketing. That's good. But we also need to look at those areas that are hardest hit. And there are a number, Minister, and we need to focus on some of those areas. And, Ross's point point isn't the only one in my constituency, but it's the one I'm discussing here this evening. And as one person at the meeting said that night, people need to know Ross's Point is open for business, but the only way that can happen is if we have specifically focused marketing actions to make sure that people have that message. You mentioned the temporary business energy support scheme, but of course all businesses get that, and that's in the context of the escalating cost of energy, and we need something that's more focused than that, and that's for everybody. But you have to recognise that there are specific issues that I'm talking about here. Yes, I would hope that the 9% VAT rate will be maintained. That is important for businesses, and that there's no cliff edge. But Minister, I speak, as you do, to a lot of people about this issue, and people are really willing to help and want to help. I mean, one man from the RNLI spoke about the fact that there are several hundred people who've never seen a sea before and don't know that there are dangerous currents there. From that simple thing to supporting businesses, communities need to know we're on their side.
Thanks very much, and thanks for raising the issue. And look, I want to thank you and colleagues for your relentless advocacy of tourism and business in Sligo, and for the constructive approach you've taken on this. I'm fully aware of the beautiful tourist sites in Sligo, as you mentioned, Ross's Point in particular, but you're right to say there's lots of other ones as well. Knocknarea, Lochgara, Enniscrone, I'd be regular Yates Country, Mullaghmores, all these beautiful places. So look, Minister Martin is acutely conscious of the importance of the tourism sector, particularly on a regional basis. Tourism accommodation has a very significant multiplier effect for other businesses in the wider accommodation. The war in Ukraine, and combined with a very high number of applicants for international protection, does though put real pressure on the government's ability to offer humanitarian accommodation. Ireland and the people of Ireland have never seen so many people arrive in such a short time frame. We've welcomed the equivalent of the city of Galway in under 1 year. So the country has done a tremendous job collectively in doing what is really the right thing. But we're now left dealing then with the consequences of that, and we're trying to do it in the best possible way. Irish people themselves, of course, have sought shelter and opportunities abroad, and Ireland has had a long tradition over history of helping nations in trouble. It's the right thing to do. The Department of Children is availing of the wide range of offers of accommodation offered to it as well. The government now is focused on continuing the support for those fleeing the war, and the government has agreed that there should be a move away from an emergency response to a more mainstreamed approach, including a reduced reliance on service accommodation. So there's an increased focus now on rapid build housing and a new call for vacant homes led by local authorities. The Minister Martin consistently engages with and takes on board the views of both the hospitality and tourism sector, particularly around the need to avoid a cliff edge and the supports that are needed, and she continues to do so, and she will take careful note of the comments that you've made in the Chamber today, and I'm very grateful for them. Thank you.